Perhaps the stench that erupted outwards the instant the door opened couldn't be described as just a smell. It wasn't just a charred smell from grandfather. I think it also may have contained the regrets of the servants and Dad's group. All of the dead. What did it mean as it floated out, overwhelming us? Was it a cry of the dead, telling us not to enter? However, Aunt Eva didn't even flinch at something like that. And we, who had to chase after her, were forced to step into the mansion, even after receiving that message.
Georgie? Georgie! 聞こえたら返事をしなさい! Georgie!
Aunt Eva shouted at the top of her lungs. Considering the situation, it's probably far too optimistic to imagine that he's alive. When we started following Aunt Eva's example and calling out George's name in loud voices, Aunt Eva spotted something and stopped walking. She was standing in front of the door to the parlor.
これは南條先生、ちょっと来てもらえるかしら。
何事ですかな。
I'd heard about the eerie magic circles written on doors, like the one on the parlor from the adults. Eerie is the only word to describe that thing, which was scribbled with a deep red paint, reminiscent of blood, so that it slowly dripped down. However, that had supposedly been there since this morning. Wondering why Aunt Eva, who had supposedly seen it already, would think it odd now, Jessica and I stared at the door.
確かにこんな数字が書かれていた記憶はありません。
ええ、なかったわ。不気味な魔法文字みたいなのは書かれていたけど、数字は書かれていなかった。
From what the two of them said, only the magic circle had been there this morning. However, right now, there were 8 digits written near the upper part of the magic circle. Zero, 7, 1, 5, 1, 1, 2, 9. I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't even want to imagine what someone had been thinking when they wrote it. It was drawn with the same paint as the magic circle, but it had clearly been written very recently. The way it had dried and the condition of the color was completely different from the magic circle part.
どうせ魔法的な意味があるんだろうぜ。深く考えたって意味なんかあるわけもないさ。
Jessica intentionally spat those words out in an attempt to push aside the eerie feel it gave off.
魔法陣というものかもしれませんが、ある種の数字遊びに魔除けが宿るという考え方です。どの列を足しても同じ数字になるみたいなものを皆さんも見聞きしたことがおありでしょう。
あれは四角形の中に埋めた数字の話じゃなかった？これは横一列だもの。何の意味があるのかさっぱりだわ。多分ジェシカちゃんの言うのが正解よ。私たちが深く考えたところで意味なんか何もないわ。
Even though she said that, she probably suspected it actually meant something. Aunt Eva was deftly writing that number down on an old receipt or something with a short ballpoint pen. Unless it had some obvious pattern, it would probably be tough to memorize a code made up of an 8-digit number.
これ日にちとかな。
日にち？何の話？
いや偶然だろうけど、俺の誕生7月15日なんだ。0715が7月15日を示すのかなって思ったら、1129もほらその11月29日って読んだらちょうど5、6。
そして11月29日ってなんだよ。
俺が知りてえぜ。まあその誕 たまたまの偶然だろうけどな。そう考えたら、なんだか不気味になっちまったぜ。11月29日が誰かの誕生日だったりとかするのか？うちの家族は違うぜ。親父もキリエさんも、エンジェも違う。もちろん、俺のお袋もだ。
心当たりがありませんな。金蔵さんの誕生日でも、源氏さんの誕生日でもないはずだ。
うちの家族も違うわよ。ローザやマリアちゃんでもないわ。
うちの家族だって違うぜ。カノン君も違うし、シャノンも違う。私、使用人の人の誕生日にはちゃんとプレゼント渡してるからみんな知ってるけど、11月29日に誕生日の人間なんて知らないぜ。
Once we started imagining that the 8 digits weren't meaningless, but actually 2 dates written together, it really started to look that way. However, its true meaning may be something completely different, or there may be no meaning at all. Anyway, since we don't have any real clues, it's probably pointless to stand around here worrying about it. The inside of the parlor is much more important. This morning, behind each of the doors with a magic circle drawn on them, had been the body of a victim. So, if something new has been added to this door, does that mean something new has been added inside the parlor? When Aunt Eva tried to open it, she felt the resistance of the lock. She immediately took out a master key and put it in the keyhole. As soon as she opened the door, Aunt Eva let out a high-pitched scream and ran inside. That alone was enough to tell us what had happened inside the room. Dr. Nansho and I looked at each other, and I shook my head slightly as we entered the parlor.
ジョージ！ジョージ！しっかりして！ジョージ！南條先生、早く！
George Aniki lay there crumpled alongside Shanon-chan's corpse. His chest was stained bright red, and judging by his still opened eyes, I'd hate to say it to Aunt Eva, but I couldn't pick up any signs of life. After moving to take George's parts, Dr. Nansho shook his head, wordlessly reporting that George was dead. Brushing him aside, Aunt Eva once again crouched beside George Aniki and started crying at the top of her lungs. With Aniki's death, one thing is certain. The murders hadn't ended on the 8th twilight. The epitaph was being carried out in its complete form, including the 9th twilight, and none shall be left alive. I was really starting to lose track of things. For some reason, Aunt Eva's half-crazed cries actually made me cool down. Crestfallen and exhausted, I flopped onto the sofa and plunked my feet on top of the table. Maybe all these murders numbed my heart. Instead of just being frightened, I felt completely confused. Dad and Kirie-san are dead, and people have been killed off one by one, starting with the servants. And there's been a hell of a lot of them by now. I don't know when the first murder happened, but they might have been killed at a rate of about 1 person per hour by now. We believe that the boat will come for us around 9 tomorrow. There's still a full 12 hours until then. How many more sacrifices to the witch will there have to be for us to survive? With the 4 of us, if one goes each hour, we won't last any longer than 4 hours. We don't even know if we'll last until midnight tonight. Yesterday, after lunch, we came into this parlor. Just as they started talking about serving some tea Aunt Rosa had bought, we kids decided to take a walk. Maria was jumping around, wasn't she? Didn't Shanon-chan bring us some cookies? She said Kumasawa-san had baked them or something. It would have been hilarious if she'd baked some mackerel into them, wouldn't it? That's right, I'll never hear Kumasawa-ba-chan's mackerel jokes again, will I? Oh, right. If I only remember stuff about Kumasawa-ba-chan, that wouldn't be fair to everyone else. Why did Dad and Kiryu-san even go outside? It's not like going without food for a day would kill us. So why did gluttony get a hold of them and make them go out for food? I'll bet that fearless dad of mine just started complaining about being hungry. Kiryu-san, you were supposed to be the brakes for my reckless dad. Why didn't you stop him? And what about your daughter, Angie? She's still just 6 years old. Don't tell me you plan to leave her in my care. After all, it's doubtful now whether even I'll be able to leave this island alive.
やめなさい。こんな時に争ってどうするんです、ジェシカさん。やめなさい。
It's been kinda noisy for a while. By the time I looked up to see what it was, Jessica and Aunt Eva had suddenly started fighting each other. No, maybe I should say that Jessica was grabbing at Aunt Eva.
エヴァおばさんが父さんたちを殺したんだ。他に説明がつかない。
何をバカなことを。あんたのお父さんたちなんか知るわけないでしょ。
ゲストハウスの1階にいたのは誰だよ。エヴァおばさんだ。1階のロビーには父さんと母さんと、そしてエヴァおばさんがいた。生き残ったのは誰だ。エヴァおばさんだけだ。どうして。あんたが犯人だから父さんと母さんを殺して外へ運び出して白々しく鍵を閉めて魔女の仕業なんかを装いやがったんだ。
じゃあジョージは1階には降りてきてないのよ。じゃあ2階でいなくなったっていうの。2階には誰がいたのよ。あなたたちがいた。あなたは知ってたんでしょ。ジョージがこっそりゲストハウスを抜け出すのを。そうもう自分は何も知らないような顔を抜け抜けと。あんたがジョージを止めててくれれば、ジョージは
やめなさいというのに。ジェシカさんはずっといとこ部屋にいました。そしてエヴァさんもずっと1階のロビーにいました。そして2人とも何も悪くない。ただ家族を失って悲しいだけなんです。犯人なんか誰もいない。どこにもいない。ただただ魔女のせいなだけなんです。だからお二人で憎み合うのはやめなさい。
The witch's fault, huh? I wonder if that's a good way to cool down the situation right now. Yeah, I finally understand why 3 people evaporated from the guest house when all the doors and windows were locked from the inside. This is what they were after. Making us think the culprit was inside and sparking this ugly mutual hatred. Has to be the culprits, the witch's goal. But if that's the case, how did the culprit lock it from the outside? When Dad's group was attacked, their master key was definitely stolen. But the doors and windows to the guest house were built so that you couldn't lock them from the outside, no matter how hard you tried. So that master key should have had nothing to do with the guest house closed room. Jessica and Aunt Eva were turning their sadness at losing their blood relatives into anger at the person in front of them. Dr. Nanjo was trying to step between them. And I sat in the sofa, staring up at the ceiling, thinking about things that didn't even matter anymore with a worn-out expression. I just couldn't believe that this was the same parlor that had been so warm and pleasant midday yesterday, for just a short time before the typhoon hit. The sudden sound of a gunshot shook me out of my half-asleep trance. Smoke was rising out of the barrel of the gun Aunt Eva held. Jessica had fallen to the floor and was covering both her eyes. Aunt Eva and Dr. Nanjo were looking down at her in shock.
大丈夫ですか、ジェシカさん。ジェシカさん。
じゃないわよ。あんたがよせっていうのに突っかかってくるから。
おいおい、どうしたってんだ。何事なんだ。
So, did Jessica grab at Aunt Eva, which turned into a scuffle? Did they start fighting over Aunt Eva's gun? Did some kind of impact cause the trigger to be pulled? I didn't know if the bullet had grazed her or if she'd been burned by the discharge. But either way, Jessica was covering both of her eyes, screaming it hurts, and rolling around on the floor.
大丈夫、落ち着いて。大した怪我ではありませんぞ。気をしっかり。
Dr. Nanchu let Jessica borrow his shoulders, saying that he would tend to her in the servant room. The servant room in this mansion had a bed and a first aid kit and was able to function as an infirmary.
父さんと母さんの仇殺してやる。殺してやる。私じゃないわよ。私じゃない。
ジェシカさん、傷に触りますから、それ以上騒がないで。さあ、使用人室に行きましょう。
Jessica continued to curse Aunt Eva as her parents' murderer. It seemed that Aunt Eva couldn't conceal her trembling at the fact that she had pulled the trigger, even if it had been an accident.
私のせいじゃないわよ。あの子が掴みかかってきたからこんなことに。私は殺してなんかないわよ。それよりジョージは誰が殺したの？そうよ、ジョージは誰が殺したのよ。ジョージ、ジョージ。私は悪くない。私は悪くない。
待てよエヴァおばさん。一人になるな。
I didn't know if it was because Aunt Eva couldn't bear her mistake, or if she'd given up control of her body to anger at the person who had killed her only son, or if it was both of those all mixed together. At any rate, she ran out into the corridor yelling, fearful and screaming. I was also worried about Jessica's condition, but right then, I couldn't leave Aunt Eva alone. Why would she go off on her own in this mansion of all places? Is she suicidal? Dr. Nanchu took Jessica towards the servant room. I chased after Aunt Eva, dashing into the depths of the mansion. After sitting Jessica on the servant room bed, Nanchu told her several times not to touch her eyes and examine the affected area. The barrel had probably been near her eyes. There was a possibility that the flames from the discharge had injured her corneas. There was no threat to her life, but it would probably be necessary to take her to a doctor as soon as possible. Nanchu applied emergency first aid, covering the affected area with gauze and wrapping it up with a bandage. As a result, Jessica completely lost her field of vision.
いいですかな。傷が痛んだりうずいたりするでしょうが、絶対にかいたり揉んだりしてはなりませんぞ。明日になったらすぐに眼科の先生のところへ行きましょう。
あいつね、本当は私を殺すつもりだったんだ。ほんのちょっと角度が悪かったら今頃殺されてた。絶対にあいつを警察へ突き出してやる。
エヴァさんはそんなことはしませんぞ。あれは事故です。
事故なもんか。あいつが父さんと母さんを殺したんだ。この島には19人目も魔女もいるわけがない。あいつが全ての犯人なんだ。ゲストハウスの1階にはあいつだけがいた。父さんと母さんを殺し、それを見てしまったジョージ兄さんも口封じに殺したに違いない。じいさまや使用人の人たちだってそうさ。きっとあいつは夕べの親族会議の途中でこっそり抜け出し
みんなを殺したに違いない。
もしそうならば警察が調べればすぐにわかることですよ。警察はすごいですぞ。鑑識の手にかかればわからぬことなどありません。私たちは誰かを疑ったり恨んだりする必要などないのです。全て警察が解決してくれます。だからジェシカさんは今は体を休め目を楽にすることに専念するのです。あまり眉間にシワを寄せては目にはもちろん美容にもよくありませんぞ。
When Jessica's abuse of Eva had reached a crescendo, she actually had started glaring instinctively, and the pressure on her eyes had hurt her. Jessica herself realized that the more she talked, the more the wound would hurt. And regardless of whether she'd overcome her suspicions of Eva, she regained her composure for the time being.
あいつが殺したんだ。父さんや母さん、シャロンやカロ君を。
She'd heard that Kanon had been killed in the chapel. Jessica still hadn't seen his face after he had died. Jessica was now less fearful about the fact that she was blinded, and more frightened that the police would carry Kanan's body away while she still couldn't see, and that she would have to say her final farewell without being able to look at his face. Her anger at the culprit, and her sadness at the death of the person she'd liked. Those mixed emotions started her crying. But right now, tears were actually painful for her, so she wasn't even permitted to leisurely remember his face in bygone days. Jessica could do nothing but sit on the bed and let her head droop, withstanding the pain.
さて、今度はエヴァさんの方が心配です。気に病まれていなければいいのですが。
Realizing that Jessica had calmed down for the time being and letting out a sigh, he stuck his head out into the hallway to look for any sign of the others coming back. Then their eyes met. Nanjo, unable to understand who this person was bewildered for an instant.
視力を失った人間って反魔法力も対魔法抵抗力もゼロになるんですって。つまり今のあんたはアイソレーテッドポーン。意味がわかるかしら。
なんですと？
Nanjo had no way of understanding who the person in front of him was, much less what she had just said.
南條先生、どうしたんです？
Unable to see, Jessica had to rely on voices alone to make out the situation. But since she heard Nanjo say something in an uneasy tone, she tightened up, thinking that something bad might have happened.
やめてくれ！殺さないでくれ！わしには病弱の孫がおる。ここでは死ねんのだ。頼む、見逃してくれ。
南條先生、南條先生！
Jessica couldn't do anything except call out from the bed. Judging by the tone of his voice, Nanjo was in a corridor confronting someone. And he was scared. His life must have been threatened just a second ago.
よせ、やめろ！
第9の晩に魔女は蘇り、誰も生き残れはしない。
The witch pointed the end of her gold staff at Nanjo. Even though he didn't know what she was planning to do, Lange assumed that she must be trying to take his life.
南條先生、南條そこに誰がいるんだよ。返事をしろよ。
やめてくれ。